I wonder about the mileage on the vehicle.
Could he have returned to the Pony Express Trail, where he said he camped Monday with his 4- and 2-year-old sons? That Monday was bitter cold in the middle of the first wave of a major snowstorm. Now, by the time he rented the car, the storm was gone. The wind chills were still in the low teens.
I'm just going to speculate if he went back out there again. And I wonder, why would someone do that?
Tim Peterson said the next day when he saw Powell, his hands were badly windburned, the worst that he had ever seen, and that Josh had a bottle of lotion with him that he applied to his hands frequently. That was Wednesday night. This was Thursday night. We get only glimpses of his hands, but even in the poor light, do they still look red? You decide.
That was local Salt Lake City reporter Brett Hunsaker. Tonight, as we continue our coverage in the search for missing Utah mom Susan Powell, we're going to put the various theories reported to the test. Now, beginning with police reports that just days after Susan went missing, her husband Josh rented a car and, according to the investigators, drove hundreds of miles. Now, take a look at the map. This is what we know. On the night that Susan went missing, Josh claims he left his home to go camping with his 2 young sons. Now, after midnight, he claims that he drove to Simpson Springs, which is located on the Pony Express Trail. This is almost 100 miles from his house. The local campground is only about 15 to 20 miles from his home. This accounts for at least 200 miles round trip. So the big question I will put to our panel is, did Josh Powell return to the campground where he claims he went? And if he did, why? Joining me, we have Steve Ketter. He's a private investigator in Salt Lake City, and he's been digging around on this case for us, doing a great job. We've got Mark Garagos, criminal defense attorney from Los Angeles, former sparring partner of mine down there. Dr. Cyril Wecht, forensic pathologist, and joining us again in studio, Bill Stanton, former New York police detective, back once again. So, Steve, I'm going to begin with you. What's the latest that you have on this investigation?
Well, Kimberly, the police aren't saying very much. They're kind of keeping things, as Chris said, close to their vest on it. The family is doing a little bit on their own through the social networking sites. And there's not much more from Josh. It's been pretty much the same. There's been silence all the way around.
Well, the silence is deafening, isn't it, Bill? I mean, this guy is not cooperating with the police. He's got an attorney now, which he's entitled to do. I get that, okay? But nevertheless, his story doesn't add up. His behavior is highly suspicious. You add now the several hundred miles that he put on the vehicle when his wife is missing. To me, he's sort of, no offense, Mark, but seems a little bit like Scott Peterson and some of these other real winners, Drew Peterson, that we've been hearing about in the press.
You know, we see this again and again and again, and these characters literally think they're going to get away with murder. Now, with the good work of the police department and their detectives, right now, my opinion is they're piecing together the links that will put this guy in jail for a very long time.
Mark, what do you think?
Well, you know, it wouldn't be the first time that they focused on a husband wrongly and wasted resources on that. We have a case in Utah within the last couple of years where they were focused on the father, they were focused on a parolee, and it turned out it was neither of them. It was some crazy man who thought he was the Messiah. So before we go and convict somebody, you have to ask yourself, would you go in if you were the husband or the father and in this situation, and you've got people doing idiotic stories about whether your hands look windburned and saying that that suggests that you're a murderer of your wife? I think I would have great hesitation before I would throw myself at the mercy of the cops who've already said I'm the only person of interest.
Dr. Wecht, but nevertheless, they need to look at some of these things to make sure to either rule him in or out. Right now, he's a person of interest based on some facts and evidence that they have.
Well, yes, of course. But still, although it's not necessary, as we know, to actually have the body, contrary to what many people believe, and you don't need the body for corpus delicti, the body of a crime, so to speak. Still, there's going to have to be some evidence that this young woman indeed is dead. And that's a long way from saying that someone is guilty of her crime. In the Kaylee Anthony case here in Florida, it was several months before bones were found. In the case of Lacey Peterson in California, it was some weeks before her body was found floating in San Francisco Bay. In other cases, bodies have not been found, and we don't even know if they're dead. You referred to Drew Peterson case. Keep in mind, that that wife, his fourth wife, she has not been found. No charges have been filed against him for her murder, charges pending for the death of wife number 3. The point is that there is probably going to have to be some evidence that Susan Powell indeed is dead. We all hope, of course, that is not the case. And if she is not found and no remnants of her body are found, then it is going to be some time before they make a definitive move, I believe, against the husband, charging him with homicide.
Dr. Weck, there's reports about a wet spot being in the carpet area of the home with fans directed at it. Looked like an attempt, I guess, to dry that area. And this is when the police broke into the home because they were suspicious because no one had heard from the family. Could you get some evidence from that that could prove whether or not she was deceased at the time?
Well, yes. The car has to be searched with utmost care. All kinds of evidence have to be looked for, fibers, trace evidence of the most minute nature, clothing of hers, a blanket or anything like that. They also should check the car to see what kind of surface material is on the tires, and that could tell them where the car may have been. They can do some marvelous work in identifying, not quite like fingerprints or DNA, but you can get a darn good idea were you in this part of Utah or some other part of Utah.
Right.
And that tied in then with the missing period of time, and the number of miles driven may take them to the place possibly where the body may be found.
So they begin the search for the forensic clues. We have a piece of sound here I want you gentlemen to listen to. Here's Josh Powell in his own words.
Your wife laid down that night, right? She wasn't feeling well, was that? And then you just, and that's when you went camping, right? Where'd you guys go camping?
Well, she wasn't not feeling well.
Oh.
She was feeling well.
Okay.
But she just went to bed.
About 5-ish, is that what we heard? We heard 5. I don't know if that's true. You would know better than we would.
No, she went to bed that night.
Okay, what do you make of his answers and sort of his behavior?
Well, I'm trained in looking for deceptive behavior, and that's screaming that. Now, going back to what the doctor was saying, no body, no case, it's going to depend on the interview. Getting this guy in, he doesn't want to speak. And to Mr. Garagos's point, he doesn't want to talk, and he's smart not to, you know, from his position. So it's going to be good detective work, hopefully find some genetic forensic material in the house, in the car, and hopefully, you know, my opinion, to convict this guy because I believe he's guilty.
Steve, I want to go to you on this. They said that they still had her cell phone was there, her keys. She didn't call.